Moving on to a high-stakes diplomatic gamble that stretched 5 hours inside the Kremlin, but still failed to unlock a path to peace. The war in Ukraine, now the deadliest conflict Europe has seen in generations, remains stuck on the same hard question that has haunted every negotiation so far: territory. On Tuesday, President Trump's senior envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner sat down with Vladimir Putin in Moscow after the Russian president hinted at a possible expansion of the war into Europe. Their mission was clear: present a revised US peace plan for Ukraine, a plan reshaped after the first version sparked alarm in Kyiv and across Europe for offering what many saw as sweeping concessions to Moscow. Russian officials said the meeting had substance and structure.
The conversation was very useful, constructive, and very meaningful. It lasted not for 5 minutes, but for 5 hours.
President Putin's foreign policy advisor, Yuri Ushakov, revealed that the original American proposal had 4 major components, all of which were examined during the talks. Some points, he said, drew agreement. Others triggered what he described as a critical, even negative response from President Putin.
Naturally, we discussed with U.S. colleagues the content of those drafts, those documents which the Americans submitted to Moscow some time ago. We went through these documents. We did not discuss any specific formulas, any specific American proposals. We discussed the essence of what was there in those American documents. We could agree with certain things, and the President Putin confirmed this to his interlocutors. We criticized some things, and the president did not hide our critical, even negative attitude to a number of proposals.
And on the centerpiece issue, that is territorial control, Ushakov said no compromise has been made yet. Russia continues to insist that the entire Donbas region must come under its control, either through negotiation or force. Ukraine firmly rejects this. The US delegation, Ushakov added, laid out new ideas, but the Kremlin held its ground. Ushakov stressed that all the details of the meeting will remain confidential.
We agreed with our U.S. colleagues that we would not disclose the substance of the negotiations that took place. This is quite logical, as the negotiations were absolutely confidential and closed to the public. As I know, our U.S. colleagues went to the U.S. Embassy, where they will report to Washington. Then they will go to Washington and report in person to President Trump on what they discussed with President Putin in the Kremlin.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio hit a more optimistic note, saying that the talks had made some progress. Meanwhile, President Trump himself, speaking at a cabinet meeting, called the war a quote-unquote mess that defies easy solutions.
Settled 8 wars. This would be the 9th, and our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled. Not an easy situation, let me tell you. What a mess. It's a war that never would have happened if I were president. Not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years.
But just hours before the meeting, Putin delivered a stark warning to NATO capitals. He accused European nations of blocking peace efforts and said certain European demands were unacceptable to Russia. And then he added that Russia is ready for war with NATO countries if Europe wants to start it. The Russian president did not specify which demands he was referring to.
We are not planning to fight Europe. I have said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. The question is, if Europe starts a war with us, I believe that very quickly. This is not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we act in a surgical, careful way. You understand, right? It is not war in the full modern sense of the word. If Europe chooses to start a war, the situation can very quickly reach a point where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
Now, over the past few weeks, several European governments have pushed back hard against the original US plan, arguing it gave too much away. And Ukraine has been lobbying them intensely. President Volodymyr Zelensky said in Paris this week that the updated American proposal looks better. Zelensky remains firm. Ukraine will not surrender territory it currently controls, nor accept limits on its military. He is also insisting on solid, enforceable security guarantees to prevent a repeat of Russia's invasion, and has said that the negotiations cannot take place without Europe.
The territorial issue is the most difficult. The issues of money and reconstruction, in my view, and I am speaking honestly and we have discussed this, are of course hard to finalize without the presence of our European partners, because the money is in Europe. To me, this does not seem entirely fair. And the issue of security guarantees is also crucial. We need concrete commitments from the United States and concrete commitments from Europe.
Several American media outlets reported that President Zelensky was expected to meet with Witkoff and Kushner in Europe after the meeting, as the Ukrainian president said he awaits the outcome of the meeting with President Putin.
With Steve yesterday and with him and with all his team, and we spoke. I think I already answered on your question that we are waiting for the results in America-Russia negotiations, today's results, and I will react according to the results.
That leaves negotiators trapped between two positions. So after 5 hours in the Kremlin and weeks of back and forth, one reality remains. Ending this war will require a breakthrough neither side is ready to make, at least not yet.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shaped nations. They scarred generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power. Firstpost reveals their truth.